A video going viral showing a woman say that she feels trapped, hopeless, and does not know how to survive in Canada. And it's similar to a bunch of videos that we've seen in the United States where people say they don't make enough to survive. And I found it very interesting. And it got me thinking about our expectations, our entitlement, and our standard of living. While I certainly sympathize and empathize with those that are struggling, I'd like to play for you this video. Wall Street Silver has the tweet. Cost of living crisis is pushing people to the edge. People feel trapped and hopeless, not knowing what to do to get out of the situation. Canada is broken. This video is about a minute and a half long, and I think you should listen to it.
I want to know how the hell people in Canada are even living. I generally consider myself a positive person. I'm resourceful, but some stuff happened around the property, and while I know I'll never truly be homeless, I have family to live with, and I have options. I'm luckier than a lot of other people, but how the hell is anyone existing in Canada? I feel trapped, and I just got a good job. I started in September, but even with that job, it pays less than 40 grand a year, and it's a job that requires education, and even on that job, I still can't do shit. I can't buy anything. I can't afford the rent these days. I'm just feeling so much despair, and I know I'm normally really, really positive, but I'm just how is everyone else, and are you okay? Because the answer is probably no. And I know I'm lucky. I don't have kids. I have good family that will support me, but I feel like I can't stay here, but I can't move anywhere else, because anywhere else.
So I don't know what she goes on to say other than I can't move anywhere else because anywhere else I move to or whatever. I certainly feel bad for these people who are experiencing pain. I think joy and happiness are relative. And the first thing I want to address with this is, people are going to get really, really mad at me, but there is an unseen entitlement that we all have experienced because our ancestors, the founding fathers, I know she's in Canada, but they have done such a very, very good job to gift us a beautiful life of luxury, wealth, and freedom that when we start to lose it, it hurts. This is my point. It is an anomaly that you were gifted such a country, that you were able to play video games all day, that you didn't have to worry about finding a good job or working hard. You didn't have to worry about being gunned down in the street or mauled by a bear for the most part, because we're in a golden age. And that golden age is sinking away, and it hurts. But when she says, she can't afford rent and stuff like that, I think about the immigrant families who come to the United States. The famous story, the trope story, is that there are Chinese migrants who come to the United States. This is the American dream. They come to the United States and they make very little money. They have a family of 5 and they live in a 1-bedroom apartment. They're stacked on top of each other in bunk beds. The father works really, really hard, 16-hour shifts every day. When I worked for American Eagle Airlines out of O'Hare Airport, it's an American Airlines regional, there was a group that people referred to as the Filipino Mafia. It was a bunch of migrants in the Philippines who all got jobs and then over time called their buddies and said, there's jobs here. We can help you get a job. Several of these men worked maximum, the legal maximum, 16 hours a day, every day, no days off until they were forced to take days off by law. And boy, did they hate it. I remember one guy who was told he had to go on a 2-week vacation and he got really, really upset. Why? A 2-week vacation only pays him 40 hours per week. He normally works 80 hours per week. He didn't want his pay cut in half for 2 weeks. Why? All of the money was going to his children for their education because his dream was that they would get an education he could pay for and their lives would be better. Where are we now? This woman says she can't afford rent. And again, by today's standards, that's kind of horrifying. You used to be able to. But let's talk about reality. Back in the day, there'd be a family of 5, 6, or 7, and they'd have one house in the middle of nowhere, and they'd all live in that house together for a very, very, very long time. Then, when a son got old enough and he wanted to have his own family, They'd come together. There's dowry and things like that. The community would help build a new house for them. They'd all work together, and that's just how it was. Now our community is dejected, disintegrated, and people are all trying to live by themselves without families. What does that mean? Well, if you have 2 parents and 5 to 7 kids, and those kids live with the family for a very, very long time, well, then you don't need to pay rent. It was a much simpler time back then. My point is this. The pain and suffering that people are feeling is because we built up this system of cities and credit. We can't afford cars, so we take out loans and then pay it off and Ponzi scheme our way into wealth. But it's breaking down. The system's collapsing. People are going to have to go back to the way things were, and they've never experienced that. Me, look, I think this. I think I'm fortunate enough to have been homeless on more than one occasion. And that gives me a very different perspective. That is to say, man, I got to be honest. You could probably, if you were to take away everything I owned, I'm not going to be upset because I don't find joy through material possession. And I love adventure. I went to Occupy Wall Street, left a warm place to sleep, and chose to sleep outside in the park. But that's because I experienced this at a younger age, and I'm not scared of it. For someone like this, and for many of these people, they're absolutely terrified that they're going to they're not going to know how to survive. How do you find food? How do you pay your cell phone bill? How do you get clean running water? As an adult who's never experienced that level of hardship, it is terrifying. For me, I figured out those things the very hard way. Life hack. So there was one point where I was just literally homeless, had nowhere to go. And that absolutely was a challenge. But to be fair, that was a very short period of time. And ultimately, it was like what you'd do is you'd go to Denny's and you'd order a cup of coffee and then sit in the booth and fall asleep. Then once the sun came up, because they're open 24 hours, and they know exactly what you're doing. But I got to be honest, as someone who was like 19 or 20 years old at the time, they didn't think too much of a young guy getting a coffee at night and then kind of dozing off and waking up at 6 a.m. because in their mind, I was probably just sleeping off drunkenness from a party and didn't want to drive or something. So I didn't get a lot of flack. But if you're an older guy doing that and you're wearing ratty clothes, they'll probably throw you out. I learned something very interesting too. When you're well off and you have an apartment and a car, because I had that experience, there are a lot of people who don't care if you fall asleep on their couch. You're hanging out, you're playing video games, it's late, it's Friday, and you fall asleep watching a movie, and they wake up and be like, yo, what up, dude? You want to get breakfast? Nobody cares. But when they know you don't have a place to go, now they're angry at you for it. I've experienced all of this stuff. One trick was you get a gym membership, and now you got a place to take showers. You sleep in your car, you wake up. Many people know these tricks. That's the interesting thing I see about videos like this. Perhaps it's because she's a woman, and women are substantially less likely to experience homelessness, but they do. Or it's because she's always had a moderate living. She says she doesn't know how people are going to survive. I survived. I think the reality is we've built a system, which brings up a good point about, like, where do I go? I can't move. I can't get any place better than this. I have to stay here. It's really hard, nigh impossible, when growing into this system, born into it, to make a homestead. You can't just go out into the middle of the woods and pitch a tent. My point is this. It's a system that was built and a system that is failing. I don't blame the individuals for this. You cannot survive in a system like this reasonably. It used to be that you could walk into the woods and start building a house. Now everyone owns everything. You're not going to, there's no unclaimed land. You have to go and file paperwork, and that can't be done. You're forced to live in their chicken coop, I guess I'll call it. But I think the reality of these narratives and what we're seeing is, to put it simply, we had it really good for a really long time. And we all grew up in an era where you'd get a high school diploma and you were fine. Our parents wanted us to get college degrees and the economy began breaking down. We then experienced the Great Recession. Things started to fall apart. And now we're like, how do we survive this? But the reality is simple. With clean running water, crammed into an apartment with 3 or 4 of your friends to pay the bills, you are still better off than every single person 100 years ago. I hope people don't take it for granted. I'm not trying to downplay hardship. I'm just pointing out that this woman here who's crying, she has better dental care than Rockefeller did. because of technological advancements and capitalism. She has a refrigerator. She has air conditioning. I'm assuming. But as bad as things are, it's remarkable to me that people don't have a relative view. They don't take a look at history as where things could be or where they've been. I suppose for me, because I was homeless, I understand not having a refrigerator or a washing machine or a microwave or, air conditioning, whatever, you name it. I once lived in a band practice space. Found it on Craigslist. It was $100 a month. Only thing that I could afford. It had no bathroom. It was just one square room with drywall put in between. You constantly heard loud music. And me and another we split it. It was $50 a month. We found discarded van seats from like a 1989 family van or something. And congratulations, we had a bed. And that was it. Showers? Oh, that was easy. You'd go into the shared bathroom and you would take a rag and you'd wipe yourself off with water from the sink. That was not being able to afford rent. But to be honest, nobody should have to live that way. I'm just pointing out that I think those experiences changed my view of how society is and should function. People didn't used to have running water at all. And for $50 a month, I had a warm place to sleep and clean running water. No refrigerator, no microwave, nothing. Just an empty square room with discarded car seats that you could sleep in. That was it. I hope things get better for this individual. I hope people figure it out, but it's going to take a lot of hard work and elbow grease. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.